I am Dr. Daisley, certified human science life coach. Welcome to Dr. Daisley Speaks program, which was designed to inform you, educate, and inspire you, the public, by sharing the stories of leaders in their own right, connecting people, cultures, and resources. As we are faced with intersecting issues, problems, moving our world forward, I have been looking at involving many leaders in their own capacity. Although many organizations, governments, and institutions preach youth development and inclusion, many of our youth experience different barriers and challenges. To help us look at the role of media and communications with all its changing facets in our society is a veteran broadcaster, Mr. Pearson Bowen. Educated at the Barbados Community College, Mr. Bowen has one of the smoothest voices in the Caribbean media circuit. A former banker who discovered his speaking talent while working in the corporate world. And he is going to tell you more about that. Born six of 10 children, Pearson grew up in the northern parish of St. Lucie, in a place often referred to at the time as backwards. That could have played on one's mind as he would have described it. However, he comes from a family of great achievers, overachievers, and so he went into media. And I'm not going to tell you anymore. I'm going to let Mr. Bowen tell you about himself. Welcome to Dr. Daisley Speaks. Pearson Bowen, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well.
You know the pleasure is mine to have you on the show because you were one of those people who sparked my interest in media in the first place. So first of all, take us back. Who is Pearson Bowen?
The little country born in St. Lucie, who grew up, as you said, children, but a large family that was just filling a bit. My family is also by our two family of overachievers. You have the governor of the central bank, the bishop of Barbados, and a whole host of other people as well. My aunts and uncles were in the teaching profession, my sisters and brothers in the finance industry. And so it was constant education, constant thriving for learning and being better. But the thing I think that I hold on strongest to is my grandmother's advice. She reminded all of us, all of her grandchildren, and I was fortunate to have grown up living next door to her. This is my maternal grandmother. She reminded us all that we were springers first, which is her name, but most we are important, and not to let anyone, anywhere, ever cause us to think that we were less than who we actually are. And so for her, I am eternally grateful.
So you heard those words from your grandmother, maternal grandmother, and where in your journey did it click that that is true of you?
Well, there are a couple of things that would have happened to me, I think. I think one of those outstanding moments was while I was at 16 years old, being shaken by someone while at church to say, "Don't you realize you're different?" Because at the time I thought I was like anyone else. Growing up, a teenager, doing all teenage things, and yet still someone is identifying me to be different. And then it brought clearly into perspective a lot of things that would have been happening to me up until that point that I never understood. I could not understand at the time why in church I was always singled out to take a leadership position. It made no sense whatsoever, but I was obedient to the call and I did what I had to do. So at 16, having been shaken, and I mean literally physically shaken, I think that's when the light bulb for me went on. I've never forgotten it because I took the time then to internalize that, stop and think for a second, you're right. You're absolutely right. And from then on, I lived in that revelation. My grandmother, however, all along, she dropped her pearls of wisdom into my being. But soon after she died, this was so weird, because soon after she died, I was awakened. I mean, literally awakened, and I could see her right at my face. And all she said to me was, "You are going to be great," and suddenly faded from my reality. Those words are the words of which I live. There is no one, I think, anywhere who could tell me differently from what my grandmother told me. in her depth.
When I had the opportunity to watch your interviews, which you conduct with such prowess, you seem to have developed a style. Where do you get your interviewing style from?
I think I'm mostly interested in people, just who people are and what people are and what people can be. One of the things from banking that I would have gained as well was that people just love the sound of their name. Call them by their name, they're going to open up and tell you their world. So immediately, for me, it was trying to get to know, let's say Adrian. Let's just find out who Adrian is and say something to Adrian that would want him to talk to me. And once Adrian talks to me, I can navigate all through Adrian's life as I see fit, because he's now opened himself up to me. But at the end of it all, I simply want Adrian to realize his best potential. And that's my primary aim. When I talk to anyone, when I have my interviews, what is it that the subject wants to highlight that makes them feel important? Even though I might ask a tough question, they must still feel important. And that's how I do it, what I do. But in all of it, I think it's important also to listen. Everybody wants to be heard. Everyone wants to be heard, as small or as old as we are. So the more I pay attention to what is said and indicate that I'm hearing what is being said, the more they open up to say more. And that's part of the trick.
And Mr. Bowen, it is also what is not being said that is being said, and that being said, can you identify 4 roles that media performs in our society?
4 roles, I see. We're here to inform. First of all, I think that's the most important role for us, to inform. We're also here to connect people and ideas through all of that process. We're to entertain, but most of all, we're to enlighten. At the end of it, we're a body of people who need guidance, who need to know where to go next. If not, we're lost. So that's part of our role as media, to be able to clarify the issues so that you know your next step. You understand better your next step.
Yes. You didn't mention educate, and so I want to ask, how can one educate in a creative way in media?
I deliberately did not say educate, because when I do so, we think that we're teachers, we know we're know-it-alls and those kinds of things. But I think the conflicting voices help to educate. They educate. Part of our process is to be able to provide you with the information. You assimilate that information to your context, and you decide where you want to go from there. In a school context, the teacher says it is 1 + 1 = 2. That is the formula. You do not deviate from that formula. But in media, I don't think that's our responsibility. Our responsibility, from my point of view, is to be able to bring those points of view together for you, the listener or the viewer, to be able to be informed. And out of that information, you choose what it is that you want to do. If that is education, great. But if we think of it in the formal sense, I'm not so sure that's exactly what we're supposed to do.
No, I have been thinking, while doing a bit of research on you before our program, you are one of the most media-oriented, non-public people. So
Yeah.
I wanted to find out, do you consider yourself to be a shy person? And if you consider yourself to be a shy person, why did you choose media?
Media has been a calling. And I don't know so much of it is the calling is media, but it's people. I just love to see people's potential change. Anything that allows me to be able to affect a positive change in people, I'm there. So whether I was the supermarket push-up boy, I'd be there, and I'd be happy to be a part of that process. So for me, the media allowed my voice to be heard by so many others. And so when I sit before the microphone or the television camera, the last thing on my mind is me. It is never me. If it ever becomes me, that's the day I think I'll shut up, because it's never about me. So I retreat and allow anything and everyone else to come to the fore. And that perhaps is, as you hinted, a part of my shyness. I don't like the attention. I don't think the attention is about me. It's never about me. I am merely a conduit towards something happening. And that makes it very easy for me to then come home, close the door, and not feel as though I'm being pressured by the outside world. I feel comfortable in my skin.
Yes, understand. You have been involved in media how many years?
Oh gosh, just forever. I started in 1991, then in a freelance capacity, took it up, as a full-time role from 1999, and so 1991 till now, I think that's what, 31 or so years. It's been a while. I never thought, yes, I never thought it would have been this long.
So what kept you going?
All this time, again, people, the purpose, people. And, because every day I meet someone different. I hear something new. I experience something slightly different sometimes, but it just intrigues me every day to see what happens next. And that's just how the story unfolds for me. That's what keeps me going.
Now, can you identify events in Barbados, that help to shape your desire to work in media?
What are those events? I liken it to one thing. In 1991, when I started in the freelance position, I was still in the bank. I was transferred then to a neighboring island, St. Kitts, and it was while there in St. Kitts, it was summer of that year, I, for the very first time, missed crossover. I did not believe that I would miss crossover, because at the time I thought it was just a wasted, abandoned moment. That everyone just had a grand old time and nobody cared. But then for the first time I missed it. I actually missed the cut and thrust of discussion. I missed the music. I missed hearing people who sounded like me. And so for me, I tuned in then as little as I could on my little shortwave radio to hear Barbados. And I heard 900 AM, which is one of the stations of the Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation, connected immediately with home. And I felt radio bridged it for me. So that's one moment. Another one of those moments I think was when I had my first moment doing an outside broadcast, a remote broadcast away from the studio, and not being lost for words, but being able then to tell the story of those who I was interviewing and those who were around me, to paint the picture so vividly. And then to hear people say, I saw what you were talking about while I was listening to the radio. You made me feel as though I was right there. Those are moments that I would never forget, that radio in particular brought home for me, that it serves a strong purpose. For television, it's uncanny because television is so visual that the pictures tell the story. But when I'm on television, for me, it's not simply about the picture. I'm always watching to see what else the cameras didn't quite pick up. And then I will train the thought of mind to that particular spot. The camera will follow it. And suddenly you see a different picture because there's always another side. And the media plays that role, finding the other side. Don't go the trodden path. I've never believed in that. I'd always want to go the other path that will bring greater enlightenment. And so for me, those are signal moments that I never forget.
Now, I want the public to realize this is the reason why Dr. Daisley invited Mr. Pearson Bowen, because one of the voices that I grew up hearing, you were one of those voices. And I remember, turning on the radio or the television and hearing you. And I think to myself, because when we hear people or see persons on television, it seems so over there, so distant, I had the opportunity to meet Pearson in person. I think it was back in 2007 or 8, I can't remember. But we had a really, really good conversation. And I said to myself, this guy is a human being just like everybody else, right? And we would have started, our friendship from then. And I have been blessed to know you. I followed your career trajectory for many years, and I'm really happy that you were here. Now, Pearson, everyone is aware of the fact that media and the industry around the world has gone through a period of unprecedented change around the world. How has the changes affected your work?
Delivery of the work been a little bit simply because now it's very tech. Previously we did too.
I'm going to have to ask you to stay still because your sound is going for some reason.
Does this? Let's set itself down. Let's see. One of the things that we are connecting now. You and I are speaking that would not have people to us.
Your sound is going. I'm not sure why.
I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I can see your voice. I can hear your. Try again one more time. Sorry.
I hope this is down now. The media has had to settle as a consequence into the technology. We had to embrace it. Look at the way you and I and but not done it. You would have physically come to your studio. You would have done it that way, based in each other's presence. No, we don't have to, and yet we get the same benefit as it would have been if we were physically together. But it's also the pandemic put a lot of pressure on the way we earn to survive what we do. And because this pandemic is not simply about us alone, it's also our advertisers. They too have been suffering as a consequence. And the business we're in depends on advertising a lot. And so when advertising dollar dries, then too our business is severely affected. We too feel the storm. And so it's been difficult just trying to find new modalities, new ways of entertaining our audiences, exciting those advertisers to eke out whatever little they have to spend, and finding ways also to hold the umbrella over their head while it rains, because for them it's not easy. But it's also caused us to relook how we engage staff, because previously we would have been on a different term of arrangement with the employee, but we've had to adjust that. And so people are now on different terms of contracts now that allow a greater flexibility, easier for us to separate if we have to separate without having to go through too much legalese. So all of those things have been shaken literally at the roots in the foundation. And now, the individual is asked to take care of a lot of their own other commitments, where previously your employer did that for you. So the security of tenure has been threatened by the pandemic, and it's not been easy, but we survived. We've been forced to be a lot more creative, and we survived.
Yes. Now, media has been impacted by COVID, and everybody keeps saying, when are we going to go back to normal? I do believe, Pearson, that we have passed normal, and where we are going is a world that is not only digital in its focus, but digital in its expression. What are some of the pitfalls that you identify that can be challenges for us as we go into more digital way of doing business?
I think we need to be cautious about thinking that once we operate in that digital space, we can do whatever we feel like, because we do not have the right to do so. Is the police there too? In natural world, that you can't step onto the road and do as you please, you can't say certain things. The same thing exists in the social digital sphere. And I think the sooner we recognize that, the easier it is for us to be able to meet and engage with it. It is also very intrusive, extremely intrusive, simply because it has no time nor space. And so people think that they can at any time try to engage with you, and you simply want to put order to your life. You simply want to say, at 8 o'clock, I'm going to bed. But yet somebody wants to invade your privacy somewhat. And so it can offset you physically. I too have that challenge, I'll tell you, because it's been so fast paced. I live in an island now, where everything is just constantly happening. At the drop of a hat, there's a press conference, something just happened, it needs to be broken. And you're home, you just want to sleep. But the expectation is that you deliver that now. And you get a little bit annoyed. You honestly do get annoyed. I wouldn't deny that fact. But then you have to remind yourself of why you're doing it, why it's important, and you step up to it. But that work-life balance is going to be completely thrown through the window. You have to now create a new work-life balance. That's unfortunate, I think, in a lot of ways, because we're more than just work. We're people. And I think the person within the whole experience should never be forgotten. So my what I would want to implore people to do is not to forget who you are, the core of who you are. Don't give up church. Don't give up your things that you know are important simply because digital media demands you. I certainly won't.
Wow, that was short and sweet. I want to now look, Pearson, a little deeper into the psyche of a media person. When you walk us through a typical day in your day, you wake up in the morning. What time do you wake up in the morning?
The alarm sounds at 4 o'clock.
I thought it was only me. Okay, that's good to know.
No, if it doesn't sound, I am so grateful. But when it sounds, I know it's time to get up because it's time to start the day. And this is Monday to Friday. So it's up at 4. It's head down to the office because we have to prepare for, as you know now, I do the morning television show. But other than that, it would have been to prepare for radio. And initially in radio, I would have gone live on the radio station at 4:30 in the morning, which means getting up at 3:30 the latest. But now going live on television at 6, it gives me a little bit, at least a half hour extra to lay down, But you get up, you go into the office and you get ready. It means planning, working through your thoughts, your ideas, reading so you're prepared for those with whom I'm engaging every day. And every day it changes. So I can't say to you today, at this moment, I do not know yet who my guests are for tomorrow. But I know as soon as it comes, I have to get cracking because I need to know everything I need to know about the subject that I'm going. So that has to happen so that at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, having gone through the makeup process, we are live. And while we're live, it is constant focus. There is no room for relaxing. There is no room for losing my train of thought because you're doing that on national television. Having done that, when I'm done at 8 o'clock, then it's up to my desk to do my radio work as head of radio. And that involves a lot of planning. There's constant planning, there are constant meetings, you're looking for ways to raise revenue. Right now, I'm in budget mode, so adjusting budgets because of all the challenges through the pandemic. And so that's a constant effort. We've just rolled out some new campaigns, so you have to constantly create. It's ever going. A couple days a week, I go on the air myself and spend 4 hours on the air to present. And that then pulls me away from my desk work, but it's what it is. So that happens Monday to Friday, my day, but I'd leave the office around 2 in the afternoon, praise God, because then I get a chance to have a little bit of sunlight rest and get ready again for the next day. So it's a constant roller coaster of gathering information, doing new things and creating new concepts all the time. It's never ending.
Wow, that was great. Now, can you explain how different technological transitions have shaped media industries? We bring you on because you are the guy. So explain how different technological transitions have shaped media industries for you.
Well, let's look at the mode of delivery.
Yes.
When I started in radio, there was Barbados Rediffusion. Barbados Rediffusion existed. It was a wired service. The only way for you to receive Barbados Rediffusion is if they ran that wire from the studio to your home. And there was a box in your home that you turn on or you leave on, really, and you'd hear when the radio goes on, when the radio goes off. That was your way of receiving radio transmissions, a wired service. Wow. Then, in 1963, the station for which I work now, the Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation, started a wireless service. So wired, now to wireless, where you do not have to have a wire run from the studio straight to your home. You can just have your antenna on your little device, raise it in the air, and it picks up the signal. And suddenly that opened up a whole world of opportunities for so many other people. Because now you wanted to take out the box that was wired into your home and have your little transistor radio. In the bringing on of the wireless studio as well, we were able then to transmit right across the Caribbean. That's how, as I told you earlier in the story, I was able to instant kids to hear, because there was all the way over there and I could hear little Barbados. So the ability now to reach beyond our shores was very, very real. Along the way, and that was in the AM frequency. But as time evolved, people demanded greater quality, high definition. You wanted something that was cleaner. You didn't want to have to drive through a part of the island and have the sound, as if you're losing signal. That was annoying. Plus, people were making great music, and you wanted to hear every beat of every song. And the best way to do so is to deliver it in better quality. Thus, high definition, and then the FM frequency came into play. So in 1981, the start of the FM frequency started again with the Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation, the launch of a youth-oriented station. So we would have gone then from wired into wireless, from an announcer-operator environment into an environment where it was just the announcer now, where you did everything on your own, then to introduce some young people's station where it was a DJ. And in the DJ world, you didn't have to have all of the background that a broadcaster in regular media would have. You just had to entertain. The ability to mix music, entertain an audience, and you are good to go. While for me, it was much more than that. You had to learn, you had to speak properly, you had to be able to read properly, all of those kinds of things. So the demand on the on-air person right through in the FM, AM spectrum,
Yes.
from that demand of the DJ. The DJ doesn't have that same kind of demand. And so those are some differences. But then came the internet, the advancement of the internet. And the internet now allowed anyone, anywhere, to become a broadcaster, they think. And so they're able to operate from their home, their little bedroom, their little studios. And so they now are on the World Wide Web.
Yes.
Hoping to be found,
right now. Yes.
Precisely, hoping to be found, hoping for that to share their particular message that challenges traditional media, because suddenly it's beginning to pull away from what we do. And so we had to get back to why we exist, the reason why we exist, so that we continue to be relevant to those whom we serve. So those are some of just a few of the changes, but it's real. And but at the center of everything we do is still people and still the advertising.
Well, I'm really glad that you said that, Pearson, because it really leads into my next question. What would you say plays a big role in driving engagement with people? People. And when I say people, I'm not talking about 10, 11, 12, 20,000 abstract faces somewhere. I'm talking about the human spirit, the human condition. That thing that you connect immediately with, you must have that connection. If you do not have the connection, they will leave you. I've been fortunate in my experience to have worked with people of the stature of like an Auntie Olga, a Marvel Manning, Alfred Manning. Wow.
Yes, sound names that in this business existed that we all looked up to. And so fortunately for me, I came along at a time when they were still around. And so I was able to benefit from a lot of their wisdom. And I remember well, Auntie Olga saying to me, Pearson, a couple of things. Be your best self, whatever you do, because in being your best self, that person who's listening experiences their best self as well. They want to be like you. So just be your best self. And secondly, be gracious, because as much as they have the right to turn you on, they also have the right to turn you off. So be gracious in the way you interact with them. Has never left me. Alfred Pragnell now, and this for me was quite fun because I remember one afternoon reading the news, and Alfred came into the studio shortly after. He said, hi Pearson. I said, hi Alfred. He said, I must tell you, you read very well. I can understand every single word you're saying. But my mechanic thinks you're reading too fast. And I'm thinking, but hello, in my own head, it didn't sound that way. I thought you could hear me. I thought you understood everything I was saying. But he's saying, no, you were too fast. To this day, I have never forgotten that. I've adjusted my pace. And so I'm able to speak a lot clearer and in a way that most people would understand, I believe. So those are some critical moments that I've had working with them. So for me, people is at the middle of everything we do. Everything. So I'm no longer afraid, for instance, to go into a remote broadcast anywhere and engage with people who I don't know. Because at the center of my head is, these are just people. they want to have a good experience, share with them that good experience with Pearson. Let them come into your space and feel comfortable. So if you see me outside on the broadcast working, you see that I'd hug you. I'm not afraid to come and say, hi Adrian, how are you? What are you doing? You know, that kind of thing. And right away you want to talk to me because I want you to know that you are important. I saw you. You're not just a faceless person. I saw you. And because I saw you, I wanted to talk to you because you're important. Those things mean a lot to people. And us in the media, we have to be ever mindful of that. Don't lose sight of who's at the center of what we do. It's important.
Now, Pearson, you're going to lead into my next question, but I want to make a comment. When I decided to get involved in media, it was in Brazil. When I was here, I would have been on the show talking about coaching, but it was in Brazil that I realized my personality. I realized those skills that I had that you just mentioned, the ability to read and to speak now. And one person there in media called me and said, Dr. Daisley, are you willing to host a program with me? And it was that, but the challenge was I didn't speak Portuguese. This would have been back in 2014. I didn't speak Portuguese. And I said to the person, call me in 2 years. Call me in 2 years' time. We found a workaround. So that leads me to my next question after this. What was the biggest lesson that you learned when you entered the media field?
Oh boy, I can't think of the biggest lesson. I just know there are a number of lessons. And it's one of the first things that scared me was the first time I made a mistake. I remember it was a night. It was actually at the night that they were determining whether or not I was good to go. So it was my test. I switched on the microphone and I said it's now 9 minutes past 6. And it was actually 6 minutes past 9. And I freaked out. I literally froze. I turned to my tester and I said the wrong thing. He said, what are you going to do? Correct it. And I went back on there and I corrected it. And with a smile and a laugh, I said, these things happen, but it's really now 6 minutes after 9 o'clock. Great having you company. Good evening, everyone. I'm Pearson Bowen. These things will happen from time to time. And from then on, I recognized it's okay to have a mistake. Just correct it. Correct it. Again, that was reinforced by Olga, Auntie Olga as well. Correct it when it happens. That, for me, was a very signal moment. But then there was an experience I had with David Ellis, the now retired, great in radio, big journalist. Is a titan in this business. And again, because I had the benefit of working with him, I was able to observe how David would present the news in a very conversational style that made you hear it and get it right away. And I loved it. But then one day he was watching what I was doing. I was doing something. It was a surprise I had for someone. And while he enjoyed the surprise, he said to me afterwards, Pearson, great, but there's a concept known as planned surprise. I thought that if you held back just a little bit and you did it this particular way, it would have had this kind of effect. Wow. So having discussed that with him, I understood, planned surprises. Never, ever let the surprise you. Plan it. The person on whom you're going to spring that surprise must never know, but it must be planned. Don't just walk into it because it can go wrong. Plan it. And the value then of planning meant so much to me. I told it to him the other day actually, when I had a chance to talk to him, and to say thank you, David, for sharing that concept with me, because planning is a big thing for me today. And anyone who knows me at work, they will say to you, that's Pearson. Pearson believes in planning.
Yes.
I say it to anyone all the time is, always know the result. If you cannot see the end, then you will not know how to get there. You'll be walking blindly. And I'm not saying that in every situation you will know necessarily the outcome, but have a sense of what it is you're trying to achieve. And in doing so, you can plot your steps towards that achievement. So when my workers, those with whom I work, come to me with an idea, the first thing I'd ask is, what do you want the listener to do? What do you want the listener to know? If you cannot explain that to me, go and come again. Try it again. You must know what the listener has to gain from this. If not, you are wasting time on the air. And time is too precious for a lot of people. Don't waste their time.
Powerful, man.
Come into that studio knowing what it is you want to achieve by the listener. Not you, by the listener. And once you're clear on that, you are good to go. So those are a few concepts I think that I've learned by being in this business. Oh, one more thing.
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, when you start with things like this, I will talk. There's Vic Fernandes as well. Vic Fernandes, when I started at Radio Fusion, Vic Fernandes was the general manager. And so it was he who urged me to leave banking to come into broadcasting. And I accepted the offer. So I followed him into broadcasting. And I remember once Vic said to us, and it was not just myself, but a number of people, he said, whenever you go to do a remote broadcast, an outside broadcast, never let me hear you say nothing is going on. There is always something going on. And you know, that's something people say if, you know, the stages are quite ready. So you say, hi, thank you so much for joining us. You know, we're live here at this particular part, but nothing is going on at the moment. Not true. There are people readying the stage. There's a leaf that just blew across the yard. There is some cow that just mowed. You know, there was something that happened. So describe that. That's what's going on. Never say nothing is going on. I have never done that. So even if I walked into a space where it's blank, there is something to describe.
And we just got a comment coming in. I'm going to be a paid up member of the Pearson Bowen, and loving his words of wisdom. That is coming in from one of our DJs, Icy Blackman. Now, Pearson, just a few years ago, social media got a really bad reputation and had been seen as more of a time filler, distracting component of business and social shenanigans. No, social media is the standard of which we are judged on our effectiveness in communication and in media. How did you feel when you first started to see the storm of social media blowing into your planned way of doing broadcast?
I like the way you picture it. Storm blowing. That'd be great. I thought it was unnecessary inspiration. I thought it was a reckless people lived. And so I was always cautious about it somewhat. But then I saw the benefits at the same time. And so I thought it needed control. And I still do think to this day that it needs control. It cannot simply be left to run wild, where you figure, you know, in this business, we just incorporate it and so be it. No, it has to have purpose again. It has to have meaning. The reason why, you know, you do what you do is to have meaning. And I'll give you one of my examples. I would have done at some time, you know, a quiz show on a Saturday morning. I don't know if you were, I think you probably were in Brazil at that time. I call it the Brain Teaser Session, an hour. And on that Brain Teaser Session, I encouraged people, while calling in to give their responses, also feel free to interact with me on the social media Facebook page. And it was wild. It was just wild. People from all over the world were just engaging there. But they also knew me to know that simply because you were trying to demand my attention there does not mean that I will divert my full attention to you. My primary attention is still very much to the standard of what we do, which is broadcasting via the radio. So while it complements what I do, it will never ever overtake what I do. And so for all of us, I think in the media, we need to be sensitive to that. Not to allow ourselves to be so distracted by social media that we find ourselves wavering into areas that are absolutely not for on air. Totally not for on air. The other thing I'm always, sorry.
I just have to ask you to clarify then, what are those areas you said are not on air, just for the audience sake?
I shudder at having to say this, fake news, because I'm not a fan of the origin of the word fake news. But nevertheless, there are people who for whatever reason, become reckless on social media spaces. And so some people on the air can lose it and think it's funny, and they find themselves replicating it on the air. No, you have to be that final editor of what goes out on the air. And I guard being on the air very jealously, and you would recognize, simply because it is a profession. And those with whom I interact now at work, they will tell you, I'll say this all the time, no one goes into a doctor's office to challenge the doctor's knowledge. We will have a second opinion, yes, we do that, but we respect them as DR, doctor of medicine. Let's see ourselves as such. Let's encourage those who come into our space have the same kind of reverence and respect for what we do. They do not, because we allow them to treat us in that way. When we begin to posture as professionals, then people begin to posture and respect us as professionals. I'm very strong on that. So I do not at all give way to anyone, anywhere, assuming that you're a DJ. No, I'm not. I am not. I am a broadcaster. I am a broadcaster. Not everyone.
I had to clap. I had to clap because the truth is that, because the average person is getting involved in media, using the access to social media, we have a slew of lack of principles going on. And I sometimes I took a long time to get involved in TikTok, for example, simply because I didn't see TikTok as professional as I saw Instagram. And I was very, very laid back in getting involved in Instagram simply because I was one of those people who felt like social media was not professional. However, I have come to the place where I realize that there is no professional I have met who have not been touched by the social media bug. And so I want to ask you, what are some of the standards that a broadcaster, a professional presenter should have?
As it relates to social media?
Yes, please.
I think there is something that has to be a social media.
Sorry, your sound is going again. So let's make sure we put it back.
I'm not so sure. But there have to be level of do's and don'ts for people as how they engage with it. It is so critical. And I think the more you define that policy, the easier it is for that practitioner to be able to fall in line. You can't assume that because it is social media and you work on the air, and let me backtrack just a bit. When you work on the air, you have become public property. Don't kid yourself, you are now public property. And so that public has a right to define you in the way they see you. But you can help that process along. You can help the process along by, as I said before, your best self. So when you become your best self, they see you in that light and that light alone. When you decide to use your space, social media space, to air your dirty linen, that's what they will see you as. So you have a responsibility to bring people along. I think one of the things that disappoint me a lot often is to see people who you look up to in the media, then go to social media and behave in some of the worst ways.
Exactly. Yes.
So disgusting. Disappoints me greatly. And so for me, I don't know about you, but for me, I'm one who will just disconnect myself from that space because I do not want that coming into my world. And so I think one who works on air needs to recognize that you have a responsibility to conduct yourself while on the air in a particular way and equally on the social media.
No, Pearson, I'm a general believer in professional standards in everything that I do. When we first started this program, I remember one person saying to me, but it's just a small program. Why do you have to be so serious? Why you need all this information, And I remember saying to the person, you don't understand. It isn't where we are, it is where we are going. But I have to operate at the standards of where I can project where we're going. Because when you are trained to be a doctor in medicine, you don't train to be a doctor in medicine at lower standards, and when you become a doctor, you get higher standards. So I practice, I love media, Pearson. I love to know, why do you do what you do? And before it was, I wanted to know what people did, why people did what they did because of the behavioral standpoint. But now it is, okay, but how can we use media to impact behavior? And that's why this program was born. That's why I'm honored to have you here on this program leads me to my next question. Today's newspapers, news-oriented television and radio programs make stories available from all across the globe, Pearson. But it's becoming obsolete. Now, what would you say is the future of radio and the future of print media?
Radio is community. Radio brings people together. I think radio will always be, because at the end of the day, it's that one space where these kinds of discussions occur. You could easily I was of age myself, put a tape in your car, put a CD, nobody likes that anymore. But you plug in your MP3s or your other devices and you want to hear music, but at some point that music is going to irritate you because you want to hear people engaging, you want to have conversation, because that's the human condition. Radio has to be relevant in that kind of way as well. Radio is real time, and radio is news. So that's the only place you're going to find it. You don't find it easily on satellite radio unless it's a dedicated channel that provides that purpose. So radio is still going to be relevant because it connects communities together. And once we keep that as part of our core, we will continue to be relevant. Print, however, to my mind, is challenged by the channels of delivery. And I no longer buy a printed newspaper. I read my newspaper online. And I think the sooner newspaper publishers find themselves in that space, is far more relevant. I think their challenge often is being able to charge for it, because people will say,
it's available everywhere, yes.
It's available everywhere. I could go on somebody else's website, probably see that content. But that's where they have to come back to being local yet again, because not everyone's website is going to share the local story. Only we can, in Barbados, share the Barbados story and the Barbados perspective. That's relevance yet again. So that's the part.
I'm very sorry, Pearson. I'm just getting the comment coming in and just making sure that I share the comments. I'm just assessing the comment.
Okay. So for a lot of people, that's important to me, especially in print media. How do you stay relevant while your challenges are coming from the global in digital sphere? Because news is now, because that's the other demand on news. News is now. You can't wait until the print comes up tomorrow. Let the story happen just now. You want to see it now. So there has to be a happy marriage between what you print for later and what you do now.
Okay, so you have, for example, the importance of storytelling, Pearson. What you tell stories even when you're interviewing people. Where did you get that storytelling ability?
Books and books. No, seriously, I love to read. I have my bookcase over there with books. And so when I read, I try to use my imagination to see what I'm reading about. I knew about England before I went there. So that I was able, once I landed there, to say, I want to go there and there and there to see if it's really what it is I've read about. So I've used my imagination quite a bit. But I'm also fascinated by the facility of language. I think words are amazing, and being able to string them along in a way that create an emotion, that paint a picture, I think that's such a skill. And for me, it was while I think I was 17 years old, when at a church camp, oh boy, I'm aging myself again. A church camp in Tobago, as a matter of fact, there was a lady who came to present. And while listening to her, I thought, I could hear, it sounds like birds chirping. I could see everything that she's talking about. And afterwards, I went over to her and I said, how do you do that? It's a strange example. How do you do that? She said, what are you talking about? How do you speak so well that I could see exactly, hear every word that you're talking about? And she then shared with me some little techniques which I've used to this day. But I think the ability to tell a story is so critical to communication today that it's not funny. You must be able to paint that picture. If you can't paint pictures, then you haven't read. You haven't read sufficiently. You haven't listened sufficiently as well. For me, before I started television, I spent significant moments of time watching some of the very best television presenters read words to tell stories. And I thought, my goodness, one day I will do that. And so one day I will do that.
Yes. Well, congratulations, Pearson, I want to now look a little deeper because while you were talking, some things started to come into my head outside of our question format. You talk about telling stories. Social media seems to be about telling a story of my life. The challenge that people have with business and social media is how can I get my business, which is maybe a tangible product, to tell a story that gives emotional value to the buyer or the person who's watching. How do you make your program give individual value to your community? And don't say people.
How do I make it give value? I try to, whatever I do, I sit from my own values. That's where I sit from. I sit from there. And so if you know me, you think, there's some people who watch me and think, you're so squeaky clean. No, I'm not. I'm a human being just like everyone else. But there are certain values that I espouse and I will not deviate from. While I'm on the air, that's it. So I believe in human kindness. I believe in being courteous. I believe in being generous. All of those kinds of things, honesty and truth. So if I feel it, I'm going to tell you I feel it. I'm not going to hide or pretend. I'm not going to have a smile on my face when I'm angry. I'm not going to do that. I think the truth is so critical. So those are some of the values that I sit on. And so I allow those values to sit with me when I'm presenting, whether on radio or on television. And, there are people who listen to radio who would say to you, boy, don't mess with Pearson here, he will tell you. And it's the truth. If I'm taking a call, for instance, and while I say, hey, good morning, and you hang it in my ear, I will preach to you. That's bad manners. I don't believe in that. Don't do it to me, I won't do it to you. So right away, people fall in line because they know I will not compromise on my value where that's concerned. I'm not going to laugh it off and assume it's all right. No, it's not all right. Children, when it comes to children, there are certain things and behaviors I'd expect from children. And so I will not compromise on that either. A child must be a child. It's our responsibility as the adult to train that child. I want to be a part of that process. So there are certain ways I treat with children from what I would be able to treat with an adult, but at the core of it all, it's how we interact better with each other. So those are some of the things. And then there's my Christianity. I'm not going to hide that. You know that about me.
I know you're Christian, yes.
So for me, I have a very firm belief in it. And so it guides who I am. It guides my principles. And so that's the way I do what I do.
Totally powerful. I'm a Christian as well. And I can tell you, in evolving in my Christianity, I have understood now the human element of spirituality. Because before it was the God element, it was my connection with God. But over the years, I have now learned the importance of the human connection, which completes the cross that we follow. And so I want to, now we're closing up. I'm so sad to say that, but now that we're closing up, there's a young person up there who's going to watch this program for sure, and might ask themselves, might say, for example, I've never been to college, or I don't speak very well. What are the steps that a person should take? Because years ago, you had to go to community college for, to learn broadcasting. Now you do a broadcasting online. What are the steps a young person who might want to get into your field should take?
I'm not necessarily the most traditional person, I'll tell you, because I never had any formal training in broadcasting. I started
seriously, Pearson?
Never had. Lion King was it for me. My fascination with broadcasting came from just simply listening, sitting next to the radio for hours on end and listening and internalizing everything I heard, then wanting to practice it. My siblings will tell you that for a significant portion of my life, they would hear me just reading aloud. So to have the newspaper or book, anything, reading aloud so that I can hear myself sound at least the closest to my favorite presenter, so that I sounded like them. And I'd spend significant hours doing those kinds of things. So no formal training in it, but you have to have a very serious, and I use the word and I underscore it, serious interest in it. It is not a plaything. If you're interested in this, it is not a anything, you have to approach it seriously to understand the basics. The basics of, yes, speaking properly. Don't assume that you can get away from that. You will not be able to get away from that. Speaking properly is critical. Reading is critical. Listening is also very, very critical. You know, people think that what I do, that I just talk. No, I don't. I spend more time listening than talking than you can well imagine, because it's in hearing that I can hear the things, as you've said before, the things not said and the things said that will help to give value to the exchange I'm having with an individual. So that's important. It's important to read. I can't underscore it enough. You have to read. There's no escaping it, because I can tell when someone comes into the business whether or not they have spent time working on reading. You're going to fumble over your words. Somehow the ability and your dexterity at words is lost because you did not read.
Yes.
You can easily pick it up. And so it's important. Community college exists because that's the formal way of doing it. And yes, that's important. I wouldn't dispute that. But it's not the only way. There's something inside of you that was seen in me that provided me the opportunity that you too can have in you. It's just to make yourself open and available to bring it out.
Now we are evolving in media, Pearson, and you know the first time I watched you speak, you were in a budget debate. You were actually bringing over a budget debate, and it was the words that you use that kind of you use diplomatic expressions to get, even though you are saying, you can tell a person, you know, you're really not doing the right thing, but the way you say it, right? That is something that I study, because I studied some of those same presenters that you mentioned. You know, I would have been a big fan of Peter Aline. I would have been, you know, yourself, Vic Fernandez, because it was Bust Your Brain. I remember Bust Your Brain that got me into the whole, you know, learning about if I can do a spelling bee competition, right?
Yes.
Things about Barbados and what's not. And so people don't understand the power that media has. And we, you know, we as, you know, presenters, media personnel, we have to take what we do seriously. You know, I see media, you know, in, let's say 20 years from now, to be a vehicle that is not used just to transmit information, but is also used to impact people's lives. That's how I see it. You know, if I'm on a program, I want to know that at the end of the program, someone's life was changed. You know, and so my life was impacted this season. Listening, guys, you are listening to Dr. Daisley, and Dr. Daisley Speaks with none other than, you know, a veteran broadcaster, Mr. Pearson Bowen. You know, I can't express how thankful I am to have you on this program. And you know, they say that if you want to be best, you should learn from the best.
That's what I heard. That's what I heard.
So, you know, do you have any final words for our listeners and our viewers?
I think I just want everyone to know that everyone has a voice, everyone has a message, everyone has a purpose. It's just to be your best self, so that that best purpose can be realized, so that that best purpose can effect great change in someone else. If you miss it, you're going to lose it. Don't waste your time with it. Don't bastardize it either. Take great care of all of your facilities, whether it's the voice, the vocal cord, the whole body in itself, and use it for good. I think too often we find ourselves distracted into the world of bad, and there's no good end to that. Let's find ourselves back into the world of good, to share with someone today, to make a difference. That's why I exist, and I hope that everyone will find a way to exist in that space with me.
Well, you've heard it from Mr. Pearson Bowen, the veteran broadcast speaker, presenter,